Hey, this is Matt from Chez, Pascal in the Wurst kitchen. Today, it's veal stock starring its favorite friend, onion brulee. Today's lesson is on stock making. There are several different stocks that can be made, whether you're using chicken bones, beef bones, perhaps veal or pork, and even fish. Although fish is a little different because they would consider that more of a fumet, where you actually sweat the vegetables out first and then add the fish bones. So right now we're going to concentrate on a veal stock. So the most important thing is having all your mise en place ready, like we will discuss and always talk about. We've roasted bones. We have veal bones roasted. The reason why we roast these bones is to remove the excess fat and to develop flavor and color into your stock. So the veal bones are going into the pot. They've been roasted. Now, we may have had to deglaze the pan. That is something that we'll discuss and how to do that and the benefits of that later. So veal bones are going into my stock pot. Now, when I make stocks at the restaurant, they're going almost every day. They go overnight, they simmer for 12 hours, we strain them, and we make something called a remouillage, which would be taking the remnants of the stock pot, pouring water back over, and then that way the next day's stock you're starting with the remi and not just water. So if you're just getting into stock making, obviously you're going to have to use water. It's okay to use water, but if you have the time, make a remouillage with your bones. It only makes your second stock that much better. So the pork bones or veal bones, even beef bones, whatever they are that have been roasted, go into the pot. Then we're going to add aromatic vegetables. We're always using Mirepoix. Okay? So you have your carrots, you have onions, and you have celery. So the first thing we're adding, onions. Now because this stock is going to cook for a long time, the vegetables are cut larger so they don't break down. Put it in our onions. We have our celery. We have our carrots. I do think it's important to peel the carrots, peel the onions, wash your vegetables. This is the most important part in cooking. You're starting with a good foundation, you need good stocks. After those go in, you simply are adding aromatics. We have bay leaf, dry thyme, and peppercorns. You'll see that used in a lot of our stock making. We're adding tomato paste. When we get tomato paste in, we scoop it into portions and we freeze it. That way it's always ready for us. Every time we make a stock, it's pre-portioned. That goes in. And then we're using red wine. Now the red wine that we use in stock making, it should be of decent quality, but by no means does it have to be an expensive wine. Think about how long this is going to simmer. We're using this for some acidity, for color. So you don't need to spend a lot of money on wine that's going into a stock. And then now, we have something called onion brulee. So what an onion brulee is, it's basically a burnt onion. This is the only time that we don't peel the onion. We cut it in half, we put it onto a very hot pan, dry, no oil, and we basically burn it, we char it. This is something that I would recommend either doing outside on a grill or if you have a good ventilation system in your stove. If you don't, it does create a lot of smoke, so just be warned. This goes in. What this does, to me, this is the most important part for developing color and flavor over the time of its simmering. Now we have either water, which at some point I had to have started with water. So it is okay to start with water. But this is what our remi would look like, or a remouillage. So essentially it's this kind of, I hate to say it, murky looking liquid. But this has a lot of flavor to add to your stock to then improve it as it simmers. So we're going to add our remi because we have it. The remi goes in. Now you're going to notice it's steaming. It's still warm because I just stole it from the kitchen at the restaurant at Chez Pascal. Yours would be cold. It's always important to start with cold liquid when making stocks. Now everything is in the pot. We turn it on and we're going to bring it up to the boil. Now that our stock has come up to a boil, we've lowered the heat and we've allowed it to simmer. This stock has been simmering for about 45 minutes. And you can see the color that's already developed from the tomato paste, the onion brulee, and the red wine. Now we should worry or think about skimming. Now because I've roasted the bones, a lot of the fat has been removed in the roasting process. But there still is some residual fats that are coming to the top. So the way we like to do it is we'll move our stock off the heat by forcing the heat to one side. It's going to force the grease or the impurities to the other. So you slightly move your pan, you concentrate the heat on one side, and then it's forcing the impurities and the grease off to the other side. Now you take a ladle and you just depress it below the surface. The idea being that the fat and the impurities are rising to the top. You will skim those out, leaving the stock underneath unsettled. So you just go around, you're just looking for some of the impurities, some of the bloods that have coagulated, and some of the grease that's formulated there, see? Just like so. And that's what we want to get rid of. And we just have our setup again, part of your mise en place, having all these things ready to go, just like so. Okay? The cleaner you get the stock, the more aggressive you can start reducing it, because you remove the fat. The fat will emulsify and it'll bond, the fat molecules bond with the water. It becomes a little too scientific for me, but I do know that if you boil a stock with grease on top, it gets cloudy. And again, we're really looking for nice, clear, neutral flavored stocks. And when I mean neutral flavored, I'm referring to the fact that we're tasting the ingredients that are in here. I'm not spicing this up. I'm not adding all different ingredients. You do that afterwards. After your stock is strained, you can then alter the flavors in the secondary cooking. So now we would let this stock simmer for about another hour and a half or 2 hours. It really depends on the amount of liquid and bones you have. Typically we're doing 10 to 12 gallons of water. We let it simmer for about 8 hours overnight typically. So that's something you just have to judge by the amount of liquid and bones. We're going to let this simmer for about another hour and a half, and then we're going to come and strain it. Another great tip that I learned when I was at culinary school, watching Greg Coons do a demonstration. And this is something, there's many things that have stood out over my career as a chef, but this is one thing in particular about how he managed and maintained his stocks. He would take a pastry brush, you would soak it in water, and as your stock simmered, he would have his cooks brush the edges of the pans with this pastry brush. Several reasons for this. I think the one for him was aesthetics. He wanted his pans to look pristine no matter what was in there. But also, you're removing any of the, let's call it the fond, so it's the bits of caramelization that's occurring on the edge of the pan as your stock reduces. You want to reintroduce that into the stock. So you simply just take your brush. I keep it in water. Okay? Adding water to the stock is not a big deal. You're just reducing it out anyways. So now that our stock has simmered anywhere from 1.5 to 5 hours, again, that really depends on the amount of liquid, the amount of bones and mirepoix you have in here. We're going to strain it. Now you want to just use any fine mesh strainer. We're going to strain it into something large enough to catch the liquid, and then we're going to discuss that word again called the remouillage. So now I'm taking I'm going to strain it. Okay, let me just reposition this. So now, okay. So I strained my stock, and now I'm going to make the remouillage. The remouillage is the re-wetting of bones. For us at the restaurant at Chez Pascal, we only make a remouillage using veal, pork, or beef. So we've strained our stock, and then I'm going to put the strained material, vegetables, onions, everything that was in my strainer, back into my pot, and then we're going to cover it with water. Okay? So we're just going to cover this back with water. We're going to bring it back to a boil and then let it simmer. The remouillage simmers for only about 3 or 4 hours, and then we strain it. And if you remember, when we made this stock, we started with the remouillage. The one other thing I would recommend is once you've dumped in your liquid, just use your pastry brush again and really clean that pan off. Make sure all that built up sediment goes back into your stock, okay? All these little tips just help you develop a very flavorful stock.